Jealousy in love is often described as a sign of deep care, but psychologically, it's more connected to fear than affection itself. Beneath jealousy usually exists the fear of loss, replacement, rejection, or not being enough for the person someone deeply values. It's an emotional response triggered when a relationship feels threatened, whether real, imagined, or emotionally exaggerated internally. What makes jealousy so powerful is that it activates both emotional attachment and personal insecurity at the same time within the mind. Humans are wired to protect emotional bonds. Relationships historically played a major role in survival and stability. The brain evolved systems that monitor closeness, loyalty, and threats to attachment, preserving social and emotional connection. When something endangers that bond, emotional alarm systems activate, producing anxiety, vigilance, and tension quickly. Jealousy is the mind reacting to perceived instability in a relationship that feels emotionally valuable or personally significant. Insecurity strengthens jealousy. People measure worth through how others perceive and choose them emotionally. When self-worth is unstable, comparison or emotional distance can feel like personal inadequacy or emotional failure. A delayed message, attention toward another, or subtle change in behavior may suddenly feel emotionally threatening or deeply meaningful. The mind interprets ordinary situations through fear, turning uncertainty into imagined proof of rejection or emotional replacement. Jealousy feels intense because attachment and identity often become deeply connected within romantic relationships over long periods. People fear losing the relationship itself, and also the emotional role and identity created within that connection. The possibility of abandonment can feel like a threat, not just to love, but to self-worth, stability, and emotional security. As a result, jealousy often reflects fear of emotional disappearance rather than simple possessiveness or desire for control alone. Social comparison also plays a major role in jealousy because humans constantly evaluate themselves in relation to others. When someone perceives another person as more attractive, successful, or desirable, insecurity can become emotionally activated quickly. The brain imagines scenarios where affection shifts away, even when no real evidence of betrayal or disconnection exists externally. This imagined competition intensifies emotional anxiety because the mind treats possibility itself as something urgent and threatening. Jealousy becomes even stronger when relationships lack clear communication, emotional reassurance, or consistency in connection. Uncertainty creates psychological tension because the brain tries to resolve unclear emotional situations and predict future outcomes. When reassurance feels inconsistent, the nervous system remains alert, constantly searching for signs of emotional safety or danger. This hyper-awareness amplifies insecurity, making even small situations feel emotionally loaded and difficult to interpret calmly. Past experiences also shape jealousy because emotional memory influences how current relationships are perceived and processed. Someone who has experienced betrayal or inconsistency may become more sensitive to signs of possible relational instability later. The nervous system remembers pain and attempts to protect against repeating it by becoming more alert to potential threats. Even healthy relationships can trigger old fears, because past emotional wounds remain psychologically connected to present experiences. Attachment styles strongly influence jealousy, especially anxious attachment patterns connected to fear of abandonment. People with anxious attachment often experience stronger emotional reactions to distance, because closeness feels essential for safety. They may overanalyze behavior, seek reassurance constantly, or imagine worst-case emotional outcomes without clear evidence. Their jealousy is usually less about control and more about fear that emotional connection could disappear unexpectedly. Avoidant individuals may still experience jealousy even if they appear emotionally detached or independent on the surface. The difference is, they often suppress emotional vulnerability instead of openly expressing fear, insecurity, or dependence. Jealousy may appear through withdrawal, emotional distance, passive behavior, or subtle defensiveness rather than confrontation. This shows that jealousy is not limited to openly emotional personalities, but exists across different ways people manage attachment. Modern social media has intensified jealousy by creating constant visibility into other people's interactions and attention. The brain now receives endless social information that can trigger comparison, insecurity, and emotional speculation. Likes, follows, messages, and online interactions become emotionally interpreted as signs of value, attraction, or competition. This constant access to ambiguous information keeps the attachment system more activated and emotionally reactive. Jealousy also becomes destructive when it shifts from emotional fear into attempts to control another person's behavior. At that point, the emotion is no longer simply about insecurity, but about managing fear through control rather than communication. People may monitor phones, demand constant reassurance, restrict interactions, or interpret independence as emotional betrayal. These behaviors temporarily reduce anxiety, but usually weaken trust and create emotional exhaustion for both individuals. Interestingly, jealousy can sometimes create stronger emotional attachment because fear intensifies attention and emotional focus. This heightened emotional state can be mistaken for deeper love, even though it is often driven more by fear than genuine intimacy. Intensity created by insecurity feels powerful, but intensity alone does not necessarily reflect healthy or stable emotional connection. Healthy relationships do not completely eliminate jealousy because emotional attachment naturally involves some fear of loss. The difference is that healthy relationships manage jealousy through communication, trust, reassurance, and emotional security. Partners acknowledge insecurity without allowing it to dominate behavior, interpretation, or emotional treatment of one another. This creates emotional stability where fears can exist, without constantly threatening the safety or balance of the relationship. Insecurity in love ultimately comes from the human desire to feel chosen, valued, and emotionally significant to another person. People want reassurance that their connection matters and that their emotional place in someone's life is stable and meaningful. When that sense of security weakens, jealousy emerges as the mind attempts to protect something emotionally important from loss. The emotion itself is human, but how people respond to it determines whether it strengthens understanding or damages trust. In the end, jealousy is not simply about possessiveness, but about fear, attachment, uncertainty, and the fragile nature of human emotional security. It reflects how deeply people value connection and how vulnerable love makes individuals feel beneath confidence and self-control. Understanding jealousy psychologically allows people to separate imagined fears from reality and respond with awareness. Real emotional security grows not from controlling love, but from building trust, self-worth, and honest communication within the relationship itself.